I was supposed to be at work, but here I am, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of freshly brewed coffee, trying to process the storm of emotions within me. This quiet moment, usually calming, now feels unsettling. It used to be my escape, a moment of peace when life was chaotic with kids running around. I'd rise early just to enjoy the stillness before the day began. I'm Evan Johnson, married for 25 years. Or at least, that was true until about an hour ago. We have 4 children, and the last one moved out just last year. My wife had been struggling with loneliness and what she called empty nest syndrome. I suggested she find a new hobby. Turns out she did. The house smelled of Audrey's favorite blueberry cinnamon coffee from Katie's Coffee Bean, a scent that used to draw her down immediately. We have an expensive coffee maker that needs descaling with a special solution every few weeks. Today, she hadn't come running at the smell, which was unusual. I noticed some scattered clothing in the living room, unfamiliar items mixed with hers. Among them was her new black lace underwear. She bought it 2 months ago and playfully showed it to me, saying it was for a special occasion. I thought that occasion would be our anniversary, but she never wore them then. I realized now that it had meant something else entirely. The noise from upstairs confirmed what my mind was already piecing together. The unmistakable creaks and thuds from the bedroom were a harsh soundtrack to the moment. My heart pounded as I tried to steady my breathing. I had come home because I forgot my briefcase in the garage after chasing out our cat, Tabby, from under the car hood. We learned that lesson years ago when our first cat, Clarence, met a tragic end in a similar scenario. The memory of that day has haunted me ever since. I planned to grab my briefcase quickly, but as I turned onto my street, a parked police car outside my house made me fear something had happened to Audrey. The panic that surged through me shifted to confusion and disbelief as I entered the house. Which brings me here, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, facing a reality I never thought possible. The unsettling conversation I overheard only added to my unease. A clear mind was necessary to handle this situation, but at that moment, I wished for a stronger drink. I have to admit, the situation unfolding in front of me was deeply disturbing, and witnessing it firsthand made it even worse. However, I needed to document it for evidence. The part that truly stung wasn't the act itself, but the harsh words directed at me. I'll admit, the realization that my partner had chosen someone else was a harsh blow. It was a jolt to the system to see it happening in my own home. My partner, visibly excited, seemed unfazed by the betrayal. There were moments that emphasized the depth of the situation, with comments that cut deep. That's when I rushed to the bathroom, feeling sick. The regret of losing the food I had earlier set in, but it paled compared to the emotional weight of the moment. Surprisingly, they seemed oblivious to my presence. Part of me was still in disbelief, even after seeing and hearing enough to convince any jury. My partner, who was older, had chosen someone noticeably younger and more athletic. I couldn't comprehend the attraction. The ordeal felt never-ending, but after a long while, there was a moment of silence, suggesting they were taking a break. I then heard my partner express surprise, followed by hurried movements and the sounds of drawers and closet doors opening and closing. It seemed they were trying to cover their tracks. Earlier, I had noticed items scattered around, which only added to the unsettling nature of the scene. The absence of certain precautions made me realize the potential consequences I needed to address. I heard them coming down the stairs. They both entered the kitchen, each wrapped hastily in blankets. They saw me at the same time. Audrey gasped, clearly startled, and her companion did the same. I couldn't tell if his reaction was due to my presence or the sight of the Model 59. He nervously glanced at his uniform, a look of panic crossing his face. "It's not there, hero." "What?" "Your service weapon. Your supervisor took it when he left. Seemed like a decent guy." I watched him visibly deflate as realization set in. He dropped to his knees and searched through the pile of clothes on the floor with a defeated expression. He took that one too, called it your extra weapon, something about a serious charge for tampering with the serial number. Ex-Officer Johnson's shoulders sagged heavily at the news. Like I said, a decent guy. We had a nice chat while you two were busy upstairs. I glanced out the window toward the street. Oh, and he took the patrol car. Your boss mentioned you were supposed to be overseeing security at a construction site. He thought about taking your uniform too, but figured you'd need it when you left. Now, where was I? Right. After Sergeant Marks recorded his video of you both and secured your weapons, he noticed my S and W and asked me a few questions. Is that yours? Yes. Registered? Yes. Do you know how to use it? Yes. Are you planning to use it? Because we don't encourage civilians to take matters into their own hands, even if they think it's justified. That's our job. I answered, I promise, Uncle Pat. I mean, Sergeant Marks, that unless officer here has a hidden weapon, no one's getting hurt. He said, okay. And as he left, he added, tell Officer Johnson not to come to the station. We'll contact him when we're ready. I'd never seen an officer look so defeated before. His size wasn't helping him now. He seemed to shrink with every moment. I decided it was wise to pick up my item at that moment. You don't have another one, do you? He shook his head. I already knew the answer because Sergeant Marks and I had checked, but I wanted to make a point. I didn't really direct it at either of them. I just gestured while continuing to speak. Maybe you should call someone for a ride home. Then again, maybe not, since there were some issues with the video I emailed to your family. They were quite concerned, mentioning things about responsibilities and loyalty. Your family sounded lovely. What a shame. Despite the tension, I felt an odd sense of satisfaction, like catching a fish and observing it before making a move. I'd have my wife drive you, but her car was taken by the authorities. What? Audrey's voice cracked with surprise. Yes, Audrey. It was impounded due to a legal matter. Sergeant Marks said under different circumstances it would be a minor infraction, but he felt the department owed me some closure after everything. Don't worry, you'll probably get it back soon. Audrey's response was a mixture of disbelief and concern, her expression wavering between guilt and regret. Well, officer, I think it's time for you to leave. And he did. After he left, my wife found her voice again. Please, Evan, I care about you. This was nothing serious, really. It was just a distraction? Something like that. I wish you'd told me sooner. I was worried you were planning to leave. Now I feel a bit foolish. I mean, you still care about me, right? Of course I do. Why would you think otherwise? Well, besides the situation itself and what's been said behind my back, there were signs. The final straw was when you treated me with disregard. Evan, what did you do? She asked, now visibly anxious. Let's just say I shared the video to make sure everyone knew the truth. You might want to give it a moment before reaching out to anyone. Her face fell. Oh no, you didn't. I just nodded. I forgot to mention one more thing, although you might already know. Your co-worker's spouse is employed at the same company as you. I believe she's the CEO's executive assistant. Don't worry. I suggested she avoid causing any disruptions at work. After all, you'll still need your job, even if it means a transfer to a different office location. When I consulted with an attorney, it was noted that, due to your higher income, you might be required to pay substantial alimony over several years. The estimate came to about $3,000 per month. I know many people in similar situations might react out of pride or disbelief, but that's not the case for me. I plan to take a break from work and go on an extended trip to clear my mind and process everything. What's that line from the song? Deep sea fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not sure why she wanted a picture of you. She mentioned it was for her father, maybe so he could share it with some colleagues, or perhaps it was just to ensure everyone was aware of the situation. Either way, I provided a photo that represented you clearly. I also sent the video to your parents and some of your co-workers. How could you be so hurtful, Evan? Oh, I wasn't trying to be hurtful. I simply wanted everyone to know who your new partner was. Your friends on social media seemed quite intrigued. By this point, Audrey was barely reacting. She sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, shaking her head and murmuring, "This can't be happening to me." "All right, it's time for you to get dressed and pack a bag. Your parents should be here soon to pick you up." I gently gestured for her to go upstairs and put on some clothes, continuing to speak calmly. "Pick me up?" I called out to her as she disappeared from sight. "Well, naturally, you'll need somewhere to stay. They mentioned you could stay with them for a while. The house will have to be sold as part of the divorce." "Divorce? You seem to have quite a few questions, my dear. That surprises me. What did you expect would happen when I found out?" "Well, I really didn't think you'd get caught. Are we really going to continue this pointless conversation?" The upstairs fell silent for a few minutes. She made no sound except for an occasional sob or whimper. Why is it that those who cheat always end up crying when they're caught? It's the strangest thing. If getting caught is so distressing, then don't cheat in the first place. After about 10 minutes, she came back downstairs dressed, but without any luggage. "Evan, darling, we really—" Just then, I heard her parents' car pull up into the driveway. "Goodbye, Audrey." Always the gentleman, I held the door open for her,